Well, much changed while George W. Bush was in office. More than, nearly 3,000 died on 9/11. And many, many more than that died in his wars and occupations. There are more than 26,000 wounded soldiers whose lives will never be the same. There are tens of thousands of young men and women with serious psychological problems because of what they have seen and what they have done. There are hundreds of thousands poisoned by depleted uranium who will suffer lives of pain and disability and who will father thousands of children with severe birth defects. Our military services are depleted and demoralized. The VA system is overwhelmed. The National Guard and Reserves have been subjected to tour after tour, disrupting lives for even the lucky ones who return unscathed. Jobs have been lost, marriages have been destroyed, homes have been foreclosed, children have been estranged, and natural disasters like Katrina have been undealt with. And still, there was no accountability. And that was just in this country. In Iraq, of course, it was much worse. Religious liberty was lost. Mosques, churches, and synagogues, which thrived under Saddam, were destroyed. Their people killed or scattered. Women lost all their rights and freedoms. Essential services were disrupted. People were tortured, hundreds of thousands killed, and cities like Fallujah lie in ruins. And in spite of heroic efforts by the vast majority of our young men and women in uniform, most of the remaining people of Iraq are much worse off than they were before we liberated them. More than 4 years of war have destroyed Iraq, destroyed our standing in the world, destroyed our national security, destroyed our civil rights, destroyed precious lives, and brought our nation to the brink of financial disaster. And it was all predictable, because we, in fact, predicted it. Well, the hundreds of billions of dollars already spent on this war have not just vanished. They've gone to Condoleezza Rice's Chevron Texaco, and Dick Cheney's Halliburton, and George Bush's Carlyle Group, and through their lobbyists into the pockets of you congressional incumbents. Perhaps that's why there was no accountability. Well, no longer. The American people finally got together and demanded a government which follows the Constitution, honors the truth, and serves the people. And that's exactly what we intend to give them. I have asked the United Nations to send peacekeepers to Iraq to do the job that we can't do as an occupying army. But whether or not they do, we will leave completely within 3 months. We're going to support what's left of our troops by bringing them home while they're still alive. Now, terrorism is a real threat. In the short term, we must protect the American people from the terrorists our misguided policies have already created. This means enhancing port security, beefing up the Coast Guard and the Border Patrol. These things we will do. But in the long term, we must stop making more terrorists. This means stopping policies and actions which make people fear and hate us. It means listening to the legitimate grievances of peoples we have wronged and then changing our ways. Only one thing has ever ended a campaign of terror anywhere in the world: separating the handful of terrorists from the larger community upon which they depend. And this is done by ending the feelings of desperation hopelessness, powerlessness afflicting the people. It is done by listening to them and then actually making their lives better. It is not done by revenge and retaliation, which only make more terrorists. We have at times, including I think the last few years, had a government with bad policies. But we are a good people. What we have long needed is a government which reflects the values and goodness of the American people. Our values and goodness are not reflected by a government which violates international law in its conflicts and denies its own citizens their constitutional rights. I have therefore ordered the release of all those being detained without charge, the closure of the prison at Guantanamo Bay, we'll find somewhere else for Bush and Cheney, and the end of the rendition program in which suspects are kidnapped and taken to secret foreign prisons to be tortured. Currently, there are about as many mercenaries in Iraq as there are armed forces troops in the United States. All contracts for mercenaries, including all those with Blackwater, are hereby canceled. Woo! This includes contracts with the Department of Defense, the CIA, and the Department of Homeland Security, which, by the way, is being abolished. There will be no more Blackwater goons terrorizing the poor people of New Orleans. I have also pardoned a host of political prisoners, including Border Patrol agents jailed for 12 years for doing their job against a Mexican drug smuggler bringing 700 pounds of cocaine across the border. Agents Campion and Ramos are now free. For those of you who haven't heard of Campion and Ramos, you haven't been watching Lou Dobbs, and you should. I have also pardoned Leonard Peltier and Mumia Abu-Jamal. And I've given a blanket pardon to all those convicted of the possession or use of small amounts of marijuana. I've got to admit to you, however, I have not pardoned Scooter Libby. He's at least going to have to pay his fine. Our values and goodness are not reflected by a government which promotes a globalization which depresses living standards at home and allows corporations to destroy the quality of life in banana republics and client states all over the world. The WTO, the IMF, and the World Bank have caused untold suffering. If we can't reform them, we will abolish them. With respect to our relationship with the government of Mexico, I have ordered the cancellation of the Security and Prosperity Partnership or North American Union.